Hello and welcome to the CDI Talks. My name is Anton Shekhovtsov and I'm director of the Center for Democratic Integrity, an Austria-based non-profit organization monitoring and analyzing attempts of authoritarian regimes to influence politics and societies in Europe. My guest today is Jacopo Iacoboni, an Italian investigative journalist writing for La Stampa. In his two most recent books, Jacopo discussed the rise of the populist five-star movement as well as its transition to a ruling party in Italy. Together with his colleague from La Stampa, Jacopo is currently finishing his new book called Oligarchs: How Putin's Friends Are Buying Italy. The book should be published at the beginning of October this year. Jacopo is also an author of numerous articles disclosing corruption and links between Italian politicians and authoritarian regimes. Good day, Jacopo, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you too, Anton. I'm very glad.
Thank you. My first question would be, last year I was writing an article on how Moscow tried to exploit the COVID-19 pandemic and discredit the West by sending so-called humanitarian help to Italy and accusing Western capitals of abandoning the country. You were the first journalist who pointed out that Moscow's help was rather an exercise in soft power rather than real help. And for this, you were attacked, and I hope that only verbally, by the Russian media, even by the Russian officials. Could you please tell us the story?
Yes, Anton, the story was very simple if we try to tell it right now, one and 3 months later, because all started in March 2020 with one or possibly two phone calls between the then Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte from the Five Star Movement and the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. And it was weird that the official communication and propaganda of the then Italian government, which was run from a party, the Five Star Movement, which has been strongly, obsessively making a huge propaganda on everything. It was weird that in that case, they communicated very, very, very little news about the phone call between Putin and the Italian Prime Minister. So I was very curious to understand what they talked about in that phone call. And 3 or 4 years later, the phone call, which was on a Saturday evening, I wrote an article on La Stampa, according basically to 3 sources, which all told me the same story, which more or less details. And the story was that Conte was dealing with Putin an operation of Russian aid in Italy over coronavirus. And the second news was that he was kind of bypassing the Italian foreign ministry, which is traditionally devoted to that sort of deals. And the third one was that the Russian aids would have come through Italy through 20 or something gigantic military cargoes, and that the Russian aids were 80%. I'm quoting literally from my source. 80% unhelpful. Many weeks later, it sorted out that they were essentially few masks. For example, in respect of the masks coming from nations like even Egypt, to make an example. And beyond the masks, there were some ventilators that eventually resulted many weeks later not working, and in some cases taking flame. But I didn't know these when I wrote my first article. I just wrote there is some deal. There is this deal between Russia and Italy. The deal has been discussed directly from the Italian Prime Minister and not from the Italian Foreign Minister with Putin. And third, the aid were basically unhelpful for the 80% of the staff. And as you know, in the weeks later, they knew many more news. If you want, we can talk about it. But this was the start of the story.
And how did you react when Russian officials started attacking you? I know that even Italian politicians sort of came to your defense and said, well, criticism is one thing, but attacking and trying to discredit journalism is quite another.
Oh, well, I remember definitely the very moment in which I knew of I suppose the worst attack from the Russian Defense Ministry. They wrote officially against me a very, very bad and a literally violent post. And so, of course, many Italian journalists and also editors immediately started to phone me, and my phone starting to ring. And well, I was not. I have to say, I was not scared from the threats. I was worried much more about the lack of response from the Italian officials, because at the end of the story, there was a significant difference between the, as you know, just a little background for our listener. We have now a government which is very different from the then Conte government. The Conte government was run from a premier who established a very strong and personal relationship, and in my view, also some sort of opaque relationship with the president of Russia. This is not new for Italian foreign policy, because if you can recall the former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, he boasted himself for establishing a sort of personal diplomacy with Vladimir Putin. So this is not entirely new. What was a little bit surprising, especially for people not following extensively the Italian politics, is that the same approach was from a prime minister chosen and nominated from the Five-Star Movement, which pretended to be a movement of the people and an anti-establishment, an anti-corruption movement. They made a strong campaign both in 2013 and 2018 against corruption, especially the corruption of the elites. So it could sound a little weird that your best friend in foreign policy is one of the most corrupt regimes of the entire world. So this is just as background. The then government, the then prime minister, didn't say anything, not to defend me as Jacopo Iacoboni, but to defend an Italian journalist. This is not, I always say, this is not a story about me. This is a story about an Italian journalist who has been threatened, journalist and then an entire newspaper, my newspaper, La Stampa, which has been also threatened from the Russians and from the Kremlin. And it's very delusional that the then Italian Prime Minister didn't find the time to say anything about this. It was a little bit better. The Italian Defense Ministry and Foreign Ministry, they at least wrote a note, a very shy official statement condemning the threats against the newspaper and myself included. And Giuseppe Conte just said 10 days later or 2 weeks later in a famous interview with the BBC, he just told that he personally was outraged that someone can doubt his personal bona fide. And he added, I think, I'm almost literally quoting him, I suppose that, Conte said, also President Putin is offended by this. So he seemed much worrying about the feelings of Putin than the feelings of an Italian newspaper. So this is it seems very unbelievable. I understand this story, but I can oath that everything is true and everything I'm saying is easily searchable on every open source around.
Well, as you may know, that there is some sort of consensus among experts on Russian malign influence that Italy is probably one of the most vulnerable West European countries in this sense. Even if we look at history, Italy had more or less good relations even with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. So the current situation is not really surprising. But do you see any dynamic in Italy's approaches to Putin's Russia in recent months?
Well, Anton, as you are rightly underlying, and I also said before, this is not new for Italian foreign policy. This is a very start of every discussion over the Russian influence in Italy. Because I mentioned Silvio Berlusconi, for example, but I also should mention the traditional realpolitik from the Democrazia Cristiana, the Italian traditional Christian Democrats party, which boasted himself for being a very loyal, possibly one of the best friends of the United States in Europe, but in the same time, some kind of literally bridge with Moscow. There has been, as you well know, an entire foreign policy theory and practice in Italy of the Italy as a bridge for the dialogue with the East, and the East has always been the Soviet Union, and this is not only about politics in Italy. This is about business, great public companies, a strong traditional relationship on oil and energy between the Russian state oil company and the Italian Eni, for example, the major Italian player in energy. And so it's a very, very long story. That said, about your question over the new dynamics of the current influence of the Russian, I suppose that there has been a de facto strong the Russian influence strongly intensified in the last 4, 5, 6 years. This is not, what I would say, this is not an opinion which could be shared or not. This is a fact. We have a lot of evidence and lot of sources, even from the Italian administration or from within the Italian intelligence agencies of, for example, a very, very much more aggressive presence of Russian spy on the Italian soil, for example. There is a number that we will provide in our coming book. You mentioned at the beginning that according to sources in the intelligence, there has been at least 87 Russian spies in Italy in those last years. And this is regarding spying. But I suppose that this is just one part of the Russian issue in Italy, because the issues are basically two. One is the spy ops, and the other one is the business ops made by Russian players in Italy. Most of all are essentially legal business, except for the fact that sometimes or many times the Russian businessmen who are making business in Italy are often under Western or even European sanctions. Except that they can, for example, make huge operations in the Italian real estate, very huge operations. They can make huge financial operation with the help and the assistance of Italian banks. If you want, I could be more precise. One of the biggest operations across Italy in the last years, and I think one very big operation, even for Russia, has been the loan from Banca Intesa of 5.2 billion to Russia Rosneft during the so-called privatization of the 19% of Rosneft. There was a lack of cash, and many of cash has been provided by an Italian bank, a huge Italian bank in Italy, the second one, but not so famous in the world as a financial bank. And this bank and especially its Russian leg is run and has been historically run from an Italian banker who publicly boasts himself for being one of the most important friend of personally of Vladimir Putin. His name is Antonio Fallico. This is not a crime, of course, because it's a loan and it's been refunded. Even if there are some observers, for example, there was an important investigation from Reuters with 9 or 10 sources telling that the loan was refunded directly from the Russian state bank, VTB. The Italian bank is denying this, telling that they were refunded from a Qatar fund, Glencore. But in any case, this is just one example, even if it's a huge example, because the chief of Rosneft, as you know, is one of the biggest Russian players across Europe. His name is Igor Sechin. And if I should may make a portrait of Sechin in Italy, I would start telling you that he's praised and acclaimed almost every year in an economic business, political business forum in Verona, in the northeast of Italy. And where he met prime ministers, vice prime ministers, former prime minister, not just from the right, in which you, Anton, are so well experts, but also from the Italian center left. And of course, from the current Lega Nord and the Five Stars. I want to repeat, this is not a crime per se, except from the very little detail that Igor Sechin has been in the first wave of the Russian the sanction against Russia in 2014 from the Barack Obama administration and the then European Union. But there are the examples of operations of Russians in Italy could be more and more, and we will try in the book just to tell the stories which seem to us more significant. And sometimes, this is another important point in my view, the two parts of the Russian dilemma, the spying operations and the business operations, sometimes they could run a parallel way or even touch themselves, because it could happen that some Russian oligarchs in Italy, even in Italy, are former spies, even in important roles. For example, of course, I have to mention Alexander Lebedev, who you well know. He's a London-based banker and a former KGB colonel in London. And he, since so many years ago, established Italy, the center of Italy, Umbria, as his private home. And he bought two gigantic properties in Umbria. And we will say something, I suppose, very important about this in the book. I will not spoiler anything, but there is something interesting about, for example, the Lebedev real estate operations in Umbria. And you know, Lebedev is the villa one of the two villas in Lebedev has been a destination of more than one trip of the current British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. And there is a fear, there has been, as you know, a huge fear in the United Kingdom agencies that for a possible Russian compromise over Boris Johnson built it exactly in Umbria, over the Italian soil. So if this would be true or not, we cannot assess for sure. But we can establish that, of course, the Umbria has been a sort of theater of a potentially damaging operation against a nation in Europe, then also in the European Union. And this, I suppose, is also embarrassing also for Italy, because all this happens without any interference on the Italian soil. So, Anton, stop me when you want, because I could make much more example of what I'm telling. Just the thing, when we spoke earlier about the Russian aid, the Russian COVID aid story, I forgot to mention Kirill Dmitriev, who is the chief of the Russian fund. And Dmitriev has been a very important person for the Russian try to establish Sputnik V vaccine as an important vaccine also in Western Europe. They tried since then, but especially in the last months, to sell the story that if we as Italy or also other European countries would accept to produce within our Italian farms the Russian vaccine, it could have been a very huge help in fighting the pandemic, especially in the first months when we didn't have all the vaccines we have right now. And just a gossip note, on a gossip note, Kirill Dmitriev has been awarded with a Medal of Honor from the Italian Republic. And he's not alone at all. This is, I wouldn't say this is the normal, but there is plenty of Russian businessmen or even oligarchs that has been awarded with high honor from the Italian Republic. This is, in my view, this is embarrassing. But in any case, anyone could judge for himself.
You mentioned espionage as one of the main instruments of Russian malign influence in Italy. And well, talking again about the dynamic in Italy's approach to Putin's Russia. Well, there was this scandal, there was this case of an Italian naval officer selling secrets, not only Italian secrets, but also NATO secrets to the Russian embassy. What does this scandal show us? Because it's one thing that, spies spy, they will always spy, it's one of the oldest professions, right? But sometimes countries, even Western countries, they try to sort of, minimize the scandals. They try to get away from the scandalous nature of the espionage. But Italy this time decided, the government decided to make the story big. Why did they do this? Are they trying to distance from Russia somehow, or to show to their Western partners that Italy, is still a strong partner of NATO?
Yes, Anton, this is important. This is the point. The last one you said is, in my view, is the point that spies spy and are always spying. In my view, and according to my sources, especially in Italy, within many European countries. But the news here is that the new Prime Minister Mario Draghi, who succeeded to Giuseppe Conte, I think this was a personal decision from the cabinet to make so public the story. If you look at the dynamics of the arrest of the Italian spy and the Russian pretended diplomat, in fact, Russian spies, I would just en passant saying that both of them, the Russians, were trained in the very famous or infamous Moscow Conservatory, which is the academy of the GRU, the Russian military services. So that said, point is that the arrest happens at 8:30 in the evening, and the news is already in the radio and in the Italian press agency in the morning of the day later. So there was a sort of run to say this to the Italian journalists. And this is very weird because until few months earlier, it was entirely the opposite. The Conte government and also an important part of the agency were minimizing the Russian problem and even the simple Russian influence issue. And Draghi didn't just do this. He also said at the end of the European Council in the first months of his appointment as a prime minister, he said that almost literally, I'm quoting, the Russian influence and spying has been in recent years very worrying, he told. Ha raggiunto una dimensione preoccupante, a very worrying level, he told. And this is important because what is changing is, of course, the political landscape in Italy. And of course, in this, a huge part is played personally from the prime minister. You know, he was the man of he was portrayed as, a little bit emphatically, he was portrayed from the European newspaper as the man who saved the euro with the whatever it takes operation when he was running the European ECB, the European Central Bank. In any case, Draghi is on a completely diverse and different note from Giuseppe Conte. Even if his majority is a very composite one, because you have a sort of national unity government in which there is also the Lega of Matteo Salvini, which, as you know, you studied a lot the dynamics of the influence of Russians through the right parties in Europe. And so, of course, we will talk about, I'm not saying not specifically about the Italian left, right and far right, but of course, one of the main channel has been the operation of the Malofia entourage with the Lega and the so-called think tanks from Vladimir Yakunin. Yakunin this is just a curiosity, but it's interesting, not just gossip. Yakunin bought a very huge property in Umbria, which is separated from the Lebedev property just from a very, very teeny road. You can walk from one to another property. So this is curious. With all the beauties of Italy, they want to stay together. They seem to want to stay together. Or they specifically love that part, that square kilometer in Umbria.
You mentioned Matteo Salvini's Lega, but also previously you mentioned the changing political landscape in Italy. I would say that in the recent months, we have been witnessing Salvini's Lega apparently distancing from its former Russian connections and contacts. And if you look at the members of the European Parliament coming from the Lega party, they started supporting resolutions of the European Parliament which are critical of Russia. This is something that is completely new. And do you believe in this? The process of distancing from the Russian contacts?
Well, this is not, Anton, exactly the story I would say about the Liga regarding the Italian politics of the Liga, because I don't trust really a lot. I don't have a big confidence in the real motivations of Matteo Salvini. There is, of course, this shift, but I think this is much more due to a fight within the Lega itself, because there is a Lega which was under Salvini more close to Russia and Russian relationships, and there is also a Lega which is more moderate or pretends to be more moderate and more close to for example, to the Italian entrepreneurs of the north of Italy. And this is the Lega of Giorgetti, who is another, the other bigger player within the Lega. But also Giorgetti has been recently in a meeting with a lot of Russians and Russian entrepreneurs. So what I think definitely is that the Lega under Salvini has been an opportunistic party. So this is an historical moment in which the nationalists and the so-called sovereign parties seem to be retreating across Europe, or a little bit retreating. And so Salvini immediately rebranded himself and his party as a government party, pretending to show, so we are reliable. We can become the party of Draghi. Of course, I don't believe entirely this narrative. I'm a little bit skeptical about that. But what's important is that Salvini is trying to offer this new image, and they are also trying, we have to say, showing that the main problem, one of I suppose, I don't know if this is a narrative, I didn't study the topic, but there is a common, a shared discourse of many Russian influenced friends in Europe, when they say now the main problem is China, not Russia. And this is one of the leitmotifs of the current Matteo Salvini and the Lega. They are more focused in saying, hey guys, now the problem is China. So this is a way, in my view, of exempting and saving Russia and talking about another issue.
I think that saying that China is a problem. I think there is
yes,
some
of course it is.
Grain of truth.
But I suppose they are telling this in order to or deny or to minimize the Russian problem.
That may well be the case, but also this process of distancing from Russia on the part of the Lega, it may also be explained by maybe some plans to create a new group in the European Parliament and in the European Union, where Salvini would be partners with Kaczynski in Poland and Orban in Hungary. With Kaczynski, it's impossible to be pro-Kremlin and in partnership with Kaczynski. However, with Orban, it is problematic because of the China connections that Orban is trying to develop, especially now with this Chinese university, but also with the Russian connections of Orban's regime. So I think maybe Salvini is trying somehow to
balance between
them. Exactly. But my question now would be: do you think that the
you have Anton, just to also to consider that Salvini is divided in Italy from the far left of Brothers of Italy, which is outside the government.
That would be my question next.
Okay.
Well, talking about the Fratelli d'Italia, Brothers of Italy, do you think they are now replacing the Lega as the major far-right party in Italy, and maybe even the most pro-Kremlin party in Italy? And after all, this is sort of almost like an anecdote that there are some family ties between Russian officials on the one hand and Fratelli, because the Irina Osipova, whom you may know, she is married to one of the members of the Fratelli d'Italia, and she is the daughter of the Italian chapter of Rossatrodnichestvo, which is one of Russia's main influence operations.
Yes, yes, of course. This is an historical relationship between the Osipov family, because even the father was the chief of Rostro-Trodnicesno in Rome. And there are also some other interesting personal relationships between the Brothers of Italy wars and Russian politics. For example, there is a man who passed to Brothers of Italy. He stayed in the Lega and decided to pass in Brothers of Italy. He's called Vincenzo Sofo. He is the boyfriend of the nephew of Marine Le Pen, as you may know, Marion Le Pen. And so there are also a little bit of gossip within this strong relationship. In any case, I think this is true. Brothers of Italy is bypassing the Lega as the measured friend of Russia in Italy. And also in the recent book of Giorgia Meloni, the leader of Brothers of Italy, she wrote extensively on the China danger, and she didn't say anything over Russia. And so definitely, yes, I think that there is one of the issue within the Italian right is the competition within the right. And basically, they have right now, they maintain an enormous amount of votes, sort of 40% of the Italian votes. But they are dividing the votes quite differently in the last months, because according to some polls, Brothers of Italy is very close to become the first, not just the first party in the center right, in the right, but also the first party in Italy at all. Because if they have the 21% and they bypass the Lega, they could become the first Italian party, because the Democrats are currently, according to the polls, at an 19%.
Do you think that if the Brothers of Italy become like a ruling party, do you think that Italy's approach to Russia again will shift towards more, Kremlin-friendly positions?
Well, this is not just one but two questions, because first of all, I think I keep up thinking that it's difficult for Brothers of Italy to in fact gain power. What I suppose is the most likely landscape is that the so-called national unity government of Mario Draghi will last until the next elections, and now is too early to make some assessment over an election which is due in 2 years, in much more than 2 years. An important passage will be, we have to pass through the election of the Italian president, the successor of Sergio Mattarella. And this will be very important, because we have to say what majority in the parliament will elect the president. And what I feel is that it's not just enough to have a supposed 20% of votes, according to the polls, to be considered a real potential leading party government. The second one, if they really become the party government and express or even express the prime minister, well, I think that if we would examine specifically Brothers of Italy and its words, we would say that they have a they have a lot of relationship, not just political, but there is an underworld of activists or so-called activists or pretended activists from or sympathizers of Brothers of Italy or the far left, which have been entwined also with dodgy operations, even in war theater. But as you well know, there are investigations from the judiciaries in Italy, for example, from the Genoa prosecutor. There has been investigation between the relationship of some far-rightist elements and the Donbass insurgency in the eastern Ukraine. In the case of the far right and the sympathizer, unofficial sympathizer, or even in some cases, even some officials in the periphery of Brothers of Italy, there is not just political relationships, but in some cases there are factual relationships of operatives across crisis theaters in Eastern Europe. So this is a little bit more than simply spying operations or business operations or influence operations. This is a step forward. And I think this is specific of the far rights.
So let me thank you for this conversation, for this interview. I want to congratulate you almost on the finishing of your book. I really look forward to reading it. Maybe it will be translated into English. I don't know if you already have these contracts. Again, thank you for joining me for the CDI Talks. And I also want to remind our audience that you may want to subscribe to our channel to receive notifications when we upload new episodes of the CDI Talks. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure, Anton.